Hey guys, what's up? It's Darkmech here and welcome back to another video. Today we are covering off the latest Battle for Azeroth live Q&A that happened with Ian and Law the other day. So I just wanted to run over it, give my little 2 cents if you haven't seen it, and basically just cover it off as we are continuing to march towards BFA and the news that we're getting around that. So to start off, the first question was raised around classic servers and an update on that. How are they going? I think when everybody heard the announcement at BlizzCon, they expected, classic servers to be released with Battle for Azeroth or before it or as a package or something like that. Pretty much it was an announcement that it was going to come eventually. Soon after BlizzCon was done and that announcement was made, there were job openings advertised on the Blizzard website for that. Some of those have been filled and removed, and it's going to take some time. But right now, all the focus, from Ian and the Q&A and things like that is based around Battle for Azeroth, not for Classic. There's a whole other team that are working on that, and it's going to take time. So that was pretty much it. We then got into actual Battle for Azeroth news and around the Zandalari. So if you are on Alpha at the moment, which I still am not, what are you doing, Blizzard? Zandalari Paladins or Prelates, so I don't know how they're said, but the Zandalari Paladins, we're going to call them. You can see them working with the light and things like that in Alpha at the moment. So Ian has stated that this could possibly lead to us seeing Zandalari Paladins or Prelates or Prelates. God, someone's going to have kittens in the comments about that. Down the track. The Zandalari won't be available straight away as an allied race, so it's a large part of the story arc at the moment through Battle for Azeroth in getting them to come and join the faction. So they're not going to be available as an allied race straight away. Be prepared for that. You are going to have to go through the story arc to unlock them and then get that option. More around allied races, the question was asked, will more allied races be introduced? When they're introduced, is it going to be done in pairs? Will it always be balanced with the faction? How is this kind of going to be done? Now, allied races is going to be a humongous cash camel for Blizzard. Like, this is extremely obvious right now with the 4 that we've currently got. So we are going to see a hell of a lot around allied races, I think. At the moment, they're always going to try and release them in pairs for now, but in the long run, that may not fit. Ian basically said with allied races that it is going to depend on what's going on with the story at the time and where we are at the game. So will it make sense for this allied race to join this faction? If it does at that time, it'll happen. If it doesn't, then it may not. So they're always going to strive towards faction balance, but it's going to be dependent on the story, not necessarily making it, the Alliance has one, so the Horde have to have one. It has to fit within the story. The Kultirans, humans, have been mentioned as an allied race, and we've been seeing a whole lot of things coming out about them. The Druid forms, I have seen a lot of them. They look awesome, and we're just going to have to continue to wait on that. But Blizzard are really going to cash in on this. There's no questions about that. It's going to, it provides a hell of a lot for us as players, but even from a revenue stream in changing over, it's huge. It is going to be huge. We're going to get more character slots as the allied races get added. So the more allied races that get added, we're going to continue to get character slots. I don't know about you, but I am still getting used to that scroll bar on the side of mine myself every time I log in now. It just feels weird, but that's going to get bigger. So yeah, that was pretty much all they had to really say around the allied races at the moment, but I think they'll be a really predominant feature in BFA and even as we continue to move further forward. Around non-allied races, there's obviously been more and more requests for more customization to the older races that we've had now. People, really want to be able to customize more hairstyles, more skin variants, more facial expressions, beards, all that kind of stuff. Ian said it's something they would like to do, but right now the focus is around allied races and BFA. So, we can't do everything at once. It's something that will eventually happen. Someone asked about getting heritage armor for the old races. Ian again said no, there's no immediate plans right now, but actually acknowledged that it would be a really cool idea. And brought up that allied races aren't meant to be cooler as such than the other races. They're just supposed to be different. I suppose coming now, it's a brand new flavor to everyone, and that's why they do feel slightly, you know, better or cooler or whatever you would like to say. But I think as time goes on, this will iron out, but as we see more and more added, it'll be really interesting to see where those race balances are kind of set. In regards to if they do offer heritage armor, how will it be sort of unlocked? Leveling up doesn't feel sort of satisfactory in regards to a requirement for the old races, so they could be linked to some kind of racial quest lines or something like that, but nothing is planned, and that was just off the top of Ian's head. Around dev communication, they brought up, someone wanted to know sort of the best ways and best mediums to contact devs with for feedback and things like that. I can't really be bothered going into this one, but basically it was, if you have feedback, make sure you give it in a rational format. Emotional horseshit feedback, you know, it really does nothing, and pretending to speak for everyone, like everyone in my class or this whole class thinks this is rubbish, it doesn't really do anything. So pretty much when you go to the WoW forums, if you have feedback, do the opposite of everything you see on there would probably be my advice. Around class balancing in BFA and ability pruning. So this has obviously been a sore point as we've continued through expansions now, probably since MOP, where people have felt like their abilities have been chopped and chopped and chopped and wanted to know what was coming in BFA. So when it comes to class design in Battle for Azeroth, they want class differentiation, they want class identity, they want players to be able to bring something to a dungeon that another player doesn't. So some things are going to be added and some things are going to be removed. It's pretty much that sort of simple. And one thing that we're going to see that's going to be really different is the spread of AoE stuns across classes. The blog from the class design team that was put out before Alpha really spoke about wanting to double down on strengths rather than emphasize weakness and really create that class differentiation and class identity. Ian said that class envy is a healthy thing as long as you have a strength that is different from somebody else's. It's okay for a class to offer something that you don't, as long as you offer something that they don't. And I don't have a real problem with that. I think that's going to be fine. Someone raised that in MOP they felt like they've been losing baseline abilities, you know, every expansion since, and it's led them to being less and less excited as new expansions come out because they feel like they're getting less on their character. Ian mentioned that MOP was the turning point for which they realized that they had just been adding more to characters every expansion just for the sake of it. It was going into a room and saying, we got a Death Knight, we need to think of 3 new abilities, and they weren't necessarily filling gaps in that character class, they were just coming up with abilities for the sake of coming up with abilities, which, you know, again, I understand that, and I don't mind the current iteration of classes. I don't think the pruning was such a bad thing, especially from an alt standpoint as well. Going to learn a class is a hell of a lot easier when there's a hell of a lot less buttons to press, but that may just be my strange mentality towards it. Azeroth armor in BFA will be filling some rotational gaps and ability gaps in BFA when the artifact goes away. That's the plan for them anyway. Again, we'll just have to wait to see how that plays out. Class balancing around abilities, numbers and things like that is now, you know, more and more heavily considered around raiding and the Mythic Plus environment. You know, they're designed to test the strengths and weaknesses of each class in each environment. If there's one class that is excelling, you know, say in raiding, but is absolute dog shit in Mythic Plus, then that's something they'll certainly look at. But they are trying to take both dungeon and raid environments into account now more than ever in that balancing. Around itemization in BFA, so we had a couple of questions raised around the value of primary stats compared with secondary stats in BFA. Ian mentioned the team needs to do a much better job at making primary stats stronger than secondary stats in BFA. It wasn't a main goal in Legion, which led to the problem we sort of saw around secondary stats in Legion. Item level, they always want to be a general indication of an upgrade. And that's going to be a real focus in BFA to make clear-cut decisions around that rather than having to go and sim it. you know, which we saw a lot of issues in Legion where something might be a 20 or a 25 item level upgrade, but after you sim it was actually a downgrade. So they really want to remove that in BFA. There may still be a need for it in things that are 5 to 10 item levels, which is fine. But in that longer range, it'll be a pretty clear-cut decision, which is really good for the general player base. Around talents, abilities, and artifacts in BFA. So, questions were asked about the removal of the artifact weapons and how this will impact us, how it'll impact our rotations and our abilities. Somebody suggested that it would be better to make all the artifact abilities baselines and not talents. Ian pretty much came out and said some classes don't necessarily need all the abilities from their artifacts as a baseline. It will suck to lose some things, but it's not 100% a necessity for your class to function. And I fully agree with that. I 100% agree with that. If there was a talent choice that's going to be taken by everyone and feels absolutely mandatory across all playstyles, then that's something that probably will shift to a baseline ability. And that's what they've been doing throughout every expansion where these kind of changes have happened. But this is their starting point at the moment on Alpha, and remember, Alpha is Alpha. It's super early days, and they'll continue to work towards there. So I don't think there's a hell of a lot to worry about with that. I think the important things will still make their way into rotation and baselines. A question was raised around the Legion legendary abilities that will be going into baseline, and what will happen when we then combine that with the Legion legendary that gives that effect. So Ian came out and said that at the moment the current thinking is that they'll just stack, or you'll get, you know, double chance for procs and things like that. So that's actually going to make for some awesome fun whilst leveling with Legion Legendary. So I'm really looking forward to that. People asked about what kind of weapons will we see replacing our artifacts, and this was a pretty obvious answer, but we kind of got a little bit more around the artifact departure in this. So once the 8.0 patch is live and we're into that pre-BFA X-Pack stage, you'll start to see some changes to our artifact weapon. So the artifact weapon will still be there and we'll still be using it, but all the traits on it will be disabled. So we'll still be using it, but all the traits will be disabled. And then as we start leveling in BFA, you will just be replacing it the normal way you used to, with green quest items, blue quest items, and then going into dungeons, and we will just start seeing weapon drops again. We'll also start seeing warglaives now, as they're now a type of weapon on the loot table, thanks demon hunters. But it's going to be the same as it was in previous expansion with weapons. Questions were asked around wider classes. Some classes have talent rows that purely focus on AoE or single target on the BFA Alpha. They basically stated this was the philosophy when they started in Mr. Pandaria with this new talent sort of row system, and they're wanting to move back towards it in Battle for Azeroth. They feel there's something cool in being able to pick strengths to really side with on a character rather than it sort of being here nor there. In Legion, AoE and single target builds didn't really feel like a huge thing or a huge advantage or a huge sway. They felt like it was burning a tomb and not a significant thing. So that's the sort of goal they're going for in BFA. PvP, there was some stuff around PvP and CC, but I won't lie, I just don't care about it. Prestige was raised, so the current plan is to keep all the rewards that are available in Legion Prestige available in BFA. So you can still work towards them in BFA. It's a real work in progress though. They don't want to make it daunting to a new player that comes in at BFA to have this massive ladder to climb. At the same time, they don't want to undermine the people that have put all the work into it. But no rewards are being removed from Prestige at the moment. You will still be able to attain them in BFA. Around loot, guys, questions around personal loot being the only option for current eye level raids moving forward into BFA was raised. And Ian said that is a fairly accurate assumption that you could make. There's been a huge adoption of personal loot. The higher use of mastery loot, was always used to funnel set pieces to raid members at the high end level. We don't have set pieces in BFA, so they don't really see a huge problem with implementing personal loot as the only loot option in current item level raids. They think it'll close the gap between the extreme high-end and the normal raiding scene. It will also lead to better raid balancing, you know, not having players that have been funneled all that gear going into the next raid or whatnot, you know, or the mythic level significantly higher than that, meaning the tuning has to be harder, meaning it's harder for the average Joes because it has to be a challenge for, you know, the methods and things like that. So I can see the high-end raiders getting, you know, not really liking this because it's going to slow down their gear progression and things like that. But, you know, in the long run, it means not having to manage as many ults. There'll still probably be an advantage to having ults, but not as big as we see now. Mission systems in BFA, people wanted to know if that's going to be the same as Legion. Ian mentioned it's going to be it's similar to Legion, but another step back. So we took a step back from garrisons in WoD to Legion. Now we're taking a step back again in the mission system in BFA from Legion. It's going to be smaller. It's going to be more tied into the war campaign, and it won't be used as a time gate like we saw it used in Legion. So that's really good news. Mythic Plus in BFA. So Ian said they have been really happy with the way Mythic Plus has been accepted, and they should be. It has been a fantastically successful system in taking over from challenge modes, and I was really sad to see challenge modes go, but Mythic Plus has been really, really good. Moving into BFA, they're actually looking at changing Tyrannical and Fortified. They're looking at bringing it down from that 15 or 10 affix and bringing it to start at level 2. And it will replace the base dungeon modifier. So at the moment you go into a Mythic, it's slightly harder than a Heroic. When you go into Mythic level 2, you have that, I think it's 10% damage and health upgrade. What they're looking to do is have Tyrannical replace that too. So the bosses will be harder or the trash will be harder, and then they'll build affixes on top of that. So that's what they're currently looking at doing. They're still exploring new affixes. They're not happy with the ones that have been data mined. The UI is also going to be improved to keep track of what you've done over the Mythic Plus season, what you've done through that patch. The current UI was sort of built off the old CM model, and it hasn't really worked as well as they wanted it to do with Mythic Plus. So we can, they've been looking at Raider IO and things like that, and I think we'll sort of see an implementation of something really similar to that. Crafting was brought up. You know, the question was raised, will we see an attempt to make crafted gear be on par with raid gear? Will we see raid drop only mats? Pretty much the long drawn out answer of this was a no. You know, they want crafted gear to be current, but they're not really looking at going back to raid drop mats and things like that. They think they did that in TBC, and they just don't think it was really a special thing. It really wasn't significant. But who knows sort of where this will go. There really wasn't a definitive answer on this other than a long drawn out who knows. Alts in BFA. Someone raised the question around what will alts be like in BFA. Will BFA be an alt-friendly X-Pack? They then went on to say that Legion isn't an alt-friendly X-Pack, even with the catch-up mechanics. And if you're watching this and you raise that question, you're a fucking idiot. Legion right now is absolutely amazing for alts. At the start, it was not. No way. It was crap. But right now, it is phenomenal for alts. It is so easy to catch up. And I know that from doing them and doing the Mage Tower challenges. And I am, you know, super rubbish at some of those classes. And I'm able to quickly outgear them and do it. So, Legion is extremely friendly for alts. And Ian pretty much said BFA is going to work the exact same way as Legion has. If you're looking for more alts to farm things, that's less of a priority for the team and something they want to facilitate. The Heart of Azeroth catch-up mechanics is going to work exactly the same as it did with Artifact Knowledge. So I think at the start, BFA probably won't be. Midway through, you'll start to get a real catch-up for the alt train sort of thing. So that was pretty much it from the Q&A, guys. You know, BFA, I think, is shaping up. I think it's going to be good. We're just going to have to wait and see. It's still an alpha right now. It's way too early to cast any judgments. Hopefully, if I get alpha anytime soon, I'll show you. If I don't get beta, I will... I don't know. Come on, Blizzard. Throw me a bone. But hopefully I'll be able to show you some of that stuff anyway and give my 2 cents as we go through that. But that's it, guys. Let me know what you're excited about. Let me know if you have any concerns from that Q&A that you know, you think you're worried about the way something's heading in BFA at the moment from the alpha build. But yeah, keen to have a chat. Thanks very much for taking the time to check out the video, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. See you guys.